What's going on, Falcon fan? This is your boy Ricardo coming back at you with another video. Guys, we are 4 days away from the start of free agency, which is the 9th on Monday. And the Atlanta Falcons got a lot of questions that we all want to know as fans. I'm pretty sure they're behind the scenes, digging in. They got their, trenched in doing their business. They got their plan laid out for how they're going to handle business coming up. But guess what? We don't know any answers to this. So today we're going to talk about some of those questions that we have as Falcon fans, and hopefully we get some answers to some of these questions pretty soon here. We'll get some answers, on Monday, right? We'll get an idea of where the Falcons stand on Monday. Um, Currently, if you look at the cap situation, like $8 million over the cap right now. So I still assume they're going to make some moves here. Um, they don't have to make moves, you know, before the new league year because they already under the cap. So technically they can wait, right? It's not like um where they have to get their books how they want to, get them before free agency because they're already up under the cap. The main thing is those teams that's over the cap right now by the 11th, which is on Wednesday, would have to get up under the cap. So that's where the whole trying to maneuver your cap situation falls into place. I still think it's important for Atlanta Falcons to understand their cap situation because free agency does start on the 9th. I mean, really, it's the tampering period because they can't make any deals, won't be finalized until the Wednesday. But you can start talking to other players on the 9th. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the Falcons, counterweight out these things. But what we have on the topic today, we're going to talk about the decisions, the questions. These are questions I have. Decisions on their own free agents, right? There's still questions about that. The free agents that they have on their own team. We don't know what they're going to do with those free agents they have, and when you think about those decisions, it really would affect how the Atlanta Falcons approach free agency and the draft. The cuts and restructures, we haven't heard anything about that. If they're planning on cutting anybody else, they plan on doing any more restructures. We still need to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about the team needs. For us, what I personally feel like the team need. That the brass might feel differently, the team, but these are what I feel like the team needs. Then we're going to talk about the one of the biggest questions that everybody is talking about is the quarterback decision that Atlanta Falcons have to make because they have to bring in a quarterback no matter what. It's just the way it is. They have to bring in a quarterback. Um, and then the last but not least, we're going to talk about the top free agents that's out there that's coming into this, to this 2026, and we're going to talk about those by different positions. So be on the lookout for that as well. So, guys, with that being said, if you have not already, go ahead and please subscribe to the channel. Please hit that notification bell so you know when I drop another video. Please hit the like button so I know you guys are here to talk about. Then please share my video throughout the YouTube universe so more people can come hear me talk about. That's right, these Atlanta Falcons. So what's going on, everybody? What's going on? Chiming in. So, guys, we're going to get right into it today. First topic is going to be um, the decisions. First question: decision on their own free agents. So, as we know, the Atlanta Falcons do have free agents out there that played important roles for the team last year. That was really, really contributed to some of their success that they had. So, it's really going to be interesting to see how they approach some of these free agents. Free agents I'm talking about in particular is Kay Nellis, um, our linebacker who led the team in tackles, who played multiple positions. He played middle linebacker. He also played a lot on the defensive line as well, creating pressures off the edge. So he was really could do a lot of things. He was considered really a jack of all trades. If you listen to the defensive coordinator for Atlanta Falcons, Jeff Ulbrich, he said that to replace Caden Ellis, you would have to actually have more than one person. That's what he said. So, what's going on? Last CBK, what's going on? Thank for checking in. So, so when you thinking about Caden Ellis, right? When you think about Caden Ellis is a big thing that Atlanta Falcons definitely need to consider. His contract. Um, he's one of those guys that's probably going to be looked at by other teams as well because of the things he's able to do. So by Atlanta Falcons let him get the free agency, they are gambling with him, unless they're in the working now, trying to negotiate a deal with him. They could do that as well. They can already start talking their own free agent. So that's one of the things. What's going on, T Terry? Um, so that's one of the things they could do. So one of the free agents that going to be really interesting to see what happened to Caden Ellis, right? Um, right now, it's him and Devon Diablo. So that linebacker room is going to be really barren if they let Caden Ellis go, and that's going to create a need. I'm just being honest with you. And it already a need, but it'll create a major need if they let Caden Ellis walk out. So um, he's definitely is one of the guys that they need to think about and consider what's going to be his future here with the Atlanta Falcons. Like I said, a guy who led the team in tackles all the years that he's been here, um, and that's impressive. And like I said, he's a jack of all trade because not only playing linebacker, having the green dot on his head, he's also able to put pressure on the quarterback by being, rushing the quarterback from the defensive line. So he's able to do a lot. But the question is, what his price tag is Atlanta Falcons, could bring him back. What would be the price tag for that? The other free agent that I'm really thinking about is Tyler Algier. In this situation, yes, Tyler Algier played a big role to the Atlanta Falcons, but there's so many different running backs out there, and I really believe that Tyler Algier deserved to be on a team where he has opportunity to be the bell cow. Right, you go back to his rookie season, he was able to rush over 1,000 yards because he was the only guy there. Now you thinking about moving forward, he had to share the field with Bijan Robinson, and so I just feel like Tyler Algier, somebody that could definitely have an opportunity to have his own squad. So I don't suspect expect Tyler Algier to be back with the team. They did come out with his numbers. I think it was 3 years for 20 million, something like that. Atlanta Falcons probably could afford that, but I think they could put their resources somewhere else and find a cheaper running back to bring in the backup Bijan. So, and we'll get into the free agent running backs here in just a minute and see who's out there that may become a little bit cheaper than what we want to pay somebody like Tyler Algier, which in my opinion deserve his money because he's somebody that's been putting in the work, throughout his contract. A guy that came in initially in BYU as a walk-on, played linebacker, got himself a scholarship, transitioned over to running back. I mean, this guy was working. I think if you listen to his story, I think he was working at like Walmart or something like that. So this guy is a true workhorse, man. You know what I'm saying? He comes from meager means and stuff like that actually go into the NFL and become a millionaire. And now it's time for him to get paid, man. So, I honestly, for me, I would rather for Tyler Algier to go somewhere else and do his things. So that's how I look at it. All right, other free agents that you can think about, David Amenyata is another guy that's honestly, to be honest with you, he's probably the number one defensive tackle that's out there right now by his production and things like that. I think he's 33, 34 year old, so he's up there higher. Atlanta Falcons could bring him back, but the question would be what would be the price tag on that. I know a lot of other teams probably going to be looking for him. So that's the way it's going to be. Um, so David Amayala, I think Bradley Pinion, it's easy to bring him back. I don't think you want to go down the road of trying to find another punter. He's probably one of the best punters in the league. So Bradley Pinion, bringing him back. D. Alford is another guy to think about and consider as well. He played really well in nickel position for the Atlanta Falcons this past season. I think you can get him back on a cheaper contract if he wants, come back in and play that cornerback role. So, and then we got to talk about our edge rushers. Initially, we could let guys like Leonard Floyd or Armor Ebiketie out the door, but the situation with James Pierce Jr. now, don't rear his head. So when you're thinking about that, man, I don't know, um, how that situation is going to pan out because um, so with James Pierce being out the door, the Atlanta Falcons probably need to invest in pass rush all over again. You guys got guys like Leonard Floyd. Do he want to run it back with the Atlanta Falcons? Arm Evacade is another guy. Do he want to run it back with the Falcons as well? So those are some of the decisions the Atlanta Falcons got to think about when they think about their own free agents, right? I just named off about 6 or 7 guys that the Atlanta Falcons got. That's their own free agents. And a lot of those guys really contributed to this Atlanta Falcons success they had this past season, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So when you're thinking about that, right, if you let those guys walk and if you don't have depth in some of those positions, you're creating a hole there. You got to pick up somebody somewhere in those positions, right? Either you're going to pick up a lesser free agent or you're going to try to find something in the draft to be able to to fill those holes. So those are things the Atlanta Falcons got to be thinking about. I know they already are. You got to remember, this this regime is a little bit behind, right? Because everybody that came in was brand new, so they had to sit down and they had to go through the roster, go to the film, of course, get some inputs from Jeff Ulbrich and his coaching staff, especially for the defensive guys. But for the most part, they got to look at the cap situation and make these decisions based off how they want to move forward. Right? Like I said, you got to create depth in some positions, and if you don't bring some back, these guys, you're going to create holes. So it's just the nature of the beast, right? You got a 53-man roster, you got a cap, salary cap that you got to deal with, and you have to make the decisions they got to make. So there you have it. Those my guys. If you know anybody else that you want to mention, just plug it in the chat and we'll talk about it. But those are my guys that I think the Atlanta Falcons really need to think about when they're talking about their own free agents that they need to talk about before they even get outside the building and trying to add somebody else new to this roster. All right, the next question going to be the cuts and the restructures. I talked about this on the last show, but it's still something that I'm pretty sure the Atlanta Falcons are thinking about. Trying to create some of that cap space. If you look around the league and you see the reporting, so a lot of teams are trying to cut salaries. Some of those teams are cutting salaries because, like I said, they got to get up under the cap before the time frame. So that's big for them. But some teams are cutting salary because they're trying to make moves and trying to build their roster out different ways. So it's a lot of people being cut. That's why we're going to talk about some of these free agents out there that it's going to be moving to different teams and stuff like that. The one thing about the NFL is once that guaranteed money is gone, a lot of times you fall into the situations where the teams cut bait. It's that cap number still be on their books as dead cap, but they don't owe the player any more guaranteed money, so they feel like they can cut bait and move forward with those other guys. So those are some of the things you got to think about when you're talking about cuts and restructures. Restructures is easy. You just restructure guys that going to be with your team that you believe in. Like I said, this is a new regime, so we don't know how much they believe in these guys that's already on the contract, so they're willing to keep some of these guys longer and longer. Those are the things you got to think about. So it's going to be interesting to see who they decide to cut. Some names that they had throughout there originally was guys like Darnell Mooney. We already know about Kirk Cousins and Cardell Hodge, right? Darnell Mooney was another guy, but like I said, if you get rid of Darnell Mooney, you create another hole. So those are some of the things Atlanta Falcons, new regime have to think about when they're talking about the cuts and the restructures. It's 4 guys that they probably consider restructuring. That would be Chris Lindstrom, AJ Terrell, Jesse Bates, and Jake Matthews. Those would be the guys that if you wanted to do some restructures, you could restructure those 4 guys and you could actually get a lot of cap, which would help the Atlanta Falcons, a lot to fix their free agency and the holes that they're going to have, you know, especially by probably letting some of these free agents, their own free agents, go. So that's the way you look at it when you talk about cuts and restructures. Real simple. We don't know who they're targeting besides the one name that we already know about, Darnell Mooney. The other two guys they already mentioned, they're going to cut those guys on the start new league year, but we don't know about Darnell Mooney and how that affects. And if not, he'll be on the team. At least we have two receivers that, and then they still have to build up that receiver room. So it's not like they out the dark if they do decide to keep Darnell Mooney. All right. So with that being said, we just talked about the decision on free agents. We talked about the cuts and the restructures. Now let's go to the team needs, right? When you talk about what the Atlanta Falcons need, right? So a lot of these needs really gonna be based on the their own free agents that they got out there because the more free agents they let go that was on the team last year, the more depth is going to be needed in some of those spots. So that's right there definitely going to dictate. So when I think about the team needs, I think even if K Nellis decide is going to stay, I think the team needs to be There it is. There it is. Right. So the linebacker would definitely be one of the needs, right? So I really believe linebacker is something that the Atlanta Falcons definitely need to think about, definitely need to consider is linebacker. Another need, potentially a cornerback. We've been talking about cornerbacks for probably the last 4 or 5 years. Somebody to go on the other side of AJ Terrell. Mike Hughes, like I said, he's not like the worst cornerback in the world. But if they can make an upgrade there, create more depth there, that would be good. Think about nickel position. We just talked about D. Alford. They let him go. Billy Bowman coming back from the Achilles injury. Do you need to find a nickel spot as well? So just that cornerback room, the depth there need to be increased. You do have some young guys that's there. You got Kobe Bryant still on the team. Somebody that could be potentially you know have a year 1 to year 2 jump. You could see something like that. But you think about linebacker, you think about the cornerback position. Definitely, it's a need for the Atlanta Falcons. Staying on defensive side of the ball, I would say interior defense alignment, defensive tackle. Um, got to be able to stop the run, especially if David Yada is out the door. You're going to need somebody to replace him. So being able to go get somebody that's dependable in the defensive front is going to be huge, right? Do they address that in free agency? Do they address that in the draft? But they definitely gonna have to address it. Um, they should address it because that's the talk that they talked about being able to build through the trenches. So going out to get defense, offensive linemen should not be a surprise to us if we see that this year um, via free agency or the draft. Just don't be surprised if you see them building through the trenches because that's they said that's their philosophy. So we'll definitely get to see that. But on the defense side of the ball, defense, interior defense alignment, cornerback, and linebacker. It's like that's this whole team, but you need to create depth there, and I think that will be huge. On the offense side of the ball, um, Tyler Algier is out the door. You want to need a back or running back. Um, to complement Bijan Robinson, with no doubt. And then that wide receiver core is going to be huge, right? Right now, we got two dependable receivers, Darnell Mooney and Drake London, of course. But other than that, we don't have somebody that we can really trust in and be able to get things done. So That's going to be huge, man. That's so on the offense side of the ball, just running back and receivers. You can look at other things that you probably want to add depth. You might want to say some more tight ends because Kevin Stefanski loved his tight ends. You could look at it like that. But for the most part, offensive line, you always need depth on the offensive line. That's not more as a need, but it just make sure you add depth there. So offensive line. Um, and I know when you say they need, you say, okay, this team's like it needs everything. Yeah, I mean they need depth, right? If you go through the 22, 11 on defense, 11 on offense, you be like, okay, they're good. But when you go past that, that's when you start talking about your depth that you have on your roster because everybody get injured, so you're going to need backups on backups, and that's going to be one of the most important things that they need to think about. So um, it seems like I called out every position, but did not. Right on the defense side of the ball, defensive tackle, linebacker, cornerback, offense side of the ball, receivers and running backs. Those are my immediate team needs out of the around the entire team. T. Terry says Caden will probably go and play for his daddy Raheem with the 49ers. I mean, you could say, but you got to think about it. Caden Ellis was here before Raheem got there, so he wasn't necessarily brought in by Raheem. He's actually brought in by Terry Fontenot because he was a former Inks. You guys remember that? So, but man, I think he would really like to stay with the Falcons, but that price tag, and I didn't realize Caden Ellis was that old. I think he's like 30, so he's up on the older scale. He still have time, play a lot of play left, but he's still on the older scale. Um, he's not in his late 20s. He's more like coming out of that, going down the downhill slopes. So that's what you got to look at, and what would be that price tag for Caden Ellis. So um, that's what you got. So, guys, those are my team needs. You let me know what you think the team needs. But these are the questions so far that the Atlanta Falcons are asking themselves, and they got, I'm pretty sure, spirited debates about how to go by and work these deals. They got collaboration visions. This their first time. This their first rodeo, so they got to make sure that they set it off right. Right. That's why you're not hearing a lot out of them. They're moving in silent, which is good. Right. It's not good for us because we want to talk about something, but at the same time, they're working. Like we know they're not just sitting on their thumbs. For one reason, they got to do something. We know that. But second, these guys want to make the first decisions be the right ones because it kind of set the foundation for how you're going to try to build this team out for the now and the future. So it's really important for them to actually be able to figure this thing out. All right, the next topic is what everybody's been talking about for probably the last 2 weeks, and that's the quarterback decision. So we know. I mean, it's a foregone conclusion. The Atlanta Falcons have no choice but to bring in a quarterback to this roster, right? Michael Penix Jr. is still recovering from his injury. We saw him on John Gruden actually podcast the other day. He said he think he's ahead of schedule. He's probably going to start doing some running here next month. So, he's on track to be ready for the start of the season. However, it's a lot of installs and practices and stuff that happens before training camp. So Atlanta Falcons got to bring in the camp arm. They got to bring in somebody to throw. I actually honestly imagine Atlanta Falcons bringing in two quarterbacks because that's what they're gonna need to do. It's just it's something that's necessary that they have to do. They even might even bring in three, to be honest with you, because Michael Penix is not going to be ready, and you need people to throw the ball, and look what stuff looks like. So it just got to be done. They're not going to keep four quarterbacks on the roster, but for this time period, I could see them bringing in three. At least two though, right? Two quarterbacks to bring in because Michael Penix is injured, right? But the question is, who will be that guy, right? That's the greatest mystery of all, right? Who will be the guy that Atlanta Falcons bring in, right? And we had a conversation the other day. Do they want to take the route of bringing in this a bridge guy, or they want to bring in a guy that want to compete with Michael Penix, right? That's the decision they have to determine, right? Um, and you know the the facts are that this regime did not pick Michael Penix Jr., so they have no loyalty to him, right? They trying to do what's best for the organization. So if they bring in competition, that's just could be what happens, right? But if they're willing to see what Michael Penix all about, they bring in a bridge guy, and when he's healthy, he's the man, right? They could make that decision, right? That's what they're probably talking about right now, and looking at their options. We're going to talk about the quarterbacks free agents just a minute, and I'm gonna tell you, it's not like something to scream home about. It's really not, to be honest with you. So you know, I would go with the latter. I would bring in a bridge guy and see if Michael Penix can actually, prove that he's the franchise guy. But it's not really our decision on this. The big news that came out yesterday was that the Arizona Cardinals are actually releasing Kyler Murray, right? Kyler Murray is going to be given $36 million next year, so he can actually sign for a vet man contract for any team that he decides to go to. It's his choice. He's an unrestricted free agent, so he has his pick of the teams you know that request his services. The question is, do he want to come in and actually compete um, with a Michael Penix Jr., or do he want to come in and say that he's the guy? They promised him he's the guy, and he's going to be the guy moving forward. Remember, Kyler Murray is only 28 years old. Those are some of the things that you got to consider. Personally, for me, right? Bringing a guy in that was a two-time Pro Bowler, offensive rookie of the year for $1 million, and they have to bring in a quarterback regardless. It's not like you have to screw yourself and bring in a bad quarterback because you don't want to, you know, not compete with Michael Penix. Michael Penix haven't proven himself yet, so you got to do what best for organization. I would prefer them to do it, to bring in a veteran guy and let Michael Penix prove it. But at the same time, if you got a guy that wants to come to Atlanta Falcons that has uber, really talented player, and he's going to come in for $1.3 million, you might have to take a chance on it. I'm just being honest with it, right? It's reported. You can't believe none of the reports out there that his two choices between the Vikings and the Falcons. And if that's the case, like I said, that means he's considering the Falcons, and he come in for a vet man, and you got a guy that potentially could be, you know, really, really good in this offense. Right? I'm talking about his skill set, being able to utilize Bijan. I can just imagine those play action passes, man, because that defense going to be in the quandary, right? Because they got to worry about Bijan Robinson getting that rock, but then they got to worry about Kyler keeping it and coming out the backside. So, man, it could potentially be really, really scary, if he's able to do his thing, man. I'm just being honest about it. He could, right? Um, but the truth is, Kyler Murray is just as injured as Michael Penix Jr. So that would be the gamble, right? You have two injured quarterbacks on your roster, and then you're putting yourself in that position. Think about it that way. So the Atlanta Falcons have a decision to think about. But like I said, Brandon Guy in $1.3 million, man, is crazy. And with that much talent, right? He hasn't had consistent talent. I think the question mark would be the same with like I said, I don't think he'd come in and be a guaranteed starter, right? Because he's just as unproven as Michael Penix, in my opinion. Now, his numbers says he has had numbers though, right? The only guy with 20,000 passing yards and over 3,000 rushing yards besides Cam Newton and Josh Allen, right? that's who Kyler Murray is in his 7 years in the league. So he has the ability to be special. The question is, will he ever get there? His situations with having a work clause in his contract and things like that, trying to put work in, looking at film and stuff, right? We don't know. Maybe he matured since that time, but that would be a situation Atlanta Falcons have to think about when you think about the quarterback position. Um, do you want somebody to come in and compete against Michael Penix Jr., or you want somebody to come in to be a designated bridge quarterback that can win games until Michael Penix get ready? That's the decision they have to make, guys. Um, and we'll find that decision out here real soon, because, like I said, when we talk about these free agents in just a minute, you'll see what I mean about it's barren, man. You don't know where direction the Falcons should go in. So this is a big decision. It's not the only decision, right? It's not the only decision the Atlanta Falcons got to make this offseason. They got a lot of decisions to make, but this is huge, right? Because having your quarterback in and determine who's going to be that guy dictates if you're going to win or not. Just be honest, man. If you don't have good quarterback play, and we've seen it, since Matt Ryan left. Let's just be honest. Since Matt Ryan left, we have not seen good quarterback play, and we got Matty Ice back in the building. Hopefully, they can get it right finally this time, and we'll see what happens with it. T. Terry says Kyler Murray wants to come to Atlanta or Minnesota. He loves baseball and wants to play baseball. Maybe he do the prime time thing and play for the Falcons and the Braves. There you go. I don't know if they'll do that, but he definitely could. Right? It's right there. So that's the thing. That's the thing, man. Um, we'll see. We'll see what happens, man. Like it kind of it's kind of interesting because deep down inside, man, I don't want nobody to. I want to see what Michael Penix can do. I really do. That's what I want to see. But it's intriguing to see what Kyler Murray will do in this offense too. So it's like I don't know, right? Like I said, if a guy want to come here for 1.3 million and you try to bring in a quarterback, why not bring in the best quarterback then instead of just not trying to rock the boat, right? Because you could bring in a guy. Let's say you bring in a Joe Flacco, bring him in because you know the offense. He can win games. You're not trying to rock the boat, right? That's a safe. That's a safe pick. Bring in a Joe Flacco or like a Jimmy Garoppolo. Somebody those safe picks, right? But if you want to go for it and make it interesting, bring in somebody to compete with Michael Penix Jr. Then we'll see. Bring the best out in both of those guys, right? That's what you're going to do because that's what sports is all about. It's about competition, right? And nobody should be upset. If it's a true competition, that's what you want, right? Right. And that's all anybody should be asking for, an opportunity to compete, right? If you're not getting an opportunity to just hang you over the keys, especially, and these guys did not draft you. So that's what I'm saying. But we'll just have to see what they decide to do with this quarterback decision. We just don't know. All right. Last topic, guys. The last topic of the day is top free agents. And we're going to do this by, like I said, by positions, right? So let's go to the quarterbacks first, right? We go to the quarterbacks. We look at the quarterbacks that's listed here. Let me get rid of that banner so you can see all the quarterbacks. So this is not all the quarterbacks, but I rather not. I didn't want to go down further because I'm like, man, it get even worse. But you got Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Marcus Mariota, Zach Wilson, Tyrod Taylor, Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Jimmy Garoppolo, Mitchell Trubisky, Case Keenum, Trey Lance, Brendan Allen, Carson Wentz, Malik Willis, and Kyle Allen. Like I said, it's more than that. It's not all the names, but man, when you start to look at that quarterback list, T. Terry says if Kyler Murray comes and play with BJ, yeah, it'd be interesting, man. It really would. That'd be something interesting to see. But when you looking at this list, man, it's not it's not enticing at all. It's really not. It's not enticing list, man. Right? And like I said, these guys, can these guys win games for you? Some of them can, maybe. Right? You got some veterans on there. Aaron Rodgers more likely going to end up in Pittsburgh if he still wants to play. Russell Wilson, maybe. I think the clock might has be done on here. Marcus Mariota, we did that before. Zach Wilson, unproven. Tyrod Taylor is a journeyman. He's definitely a backup. Joe Flacco, at this point in time, is a backup. Kenny Pickett, no. Jimmy Garoppolo, like I said, Jimmy Garoppolo went to a Super Bowl, right? But he's a backup at this point in time. Mr. Trubisky is a backup. Case Keenum backup. Trey Lance, we never really seen Trey Lance play. We don't know what he is. Brandon Allen, um, Josh Johnson, Carson Wentz, right? Uh, Malik Willis. Malik Willis. Everybody's already high on Malik Willis. I don't know why he only played 6 games in his career, but the showcase he did with the Green Bay Packers, I guess, going to get him paid. He would probably be out the Atlanta Falcon price range though. And then Kyle Allen back up for Detroit. So this is and like I said, guys, this is not all the quarterbacks on free agents. It's more down there. You got guys like Gardner Minshew and so on and so forth later on down this list. But man, if you're looking at these unrestricted free agents and you thinking that the Atlanta Falcons got a good, you know, list of free agents to consider, they don't. They really don't, right? Guy that's not on here, Tua Tagovailoa, they have not released him yet, so it'd be interesting to see. And Kyler Murray's not on here either. But Kyler Murray would be one of the guys on the list as well. So Kyler Murray, he wasn't on this list because it hadn't been updated yet. But Kyler Murray, Tua Tagovailoa, Geno Smith, those guys have not been released yet. So they won't be on this list as well. But those be guys you add to the pool as well. But this is the quarterback list, man, and it's not impressive. So I'm like I'm saying, if you're gonna go in these guys, besides a Kyler Murray, um, Michael Penny's still the starter. Basically, what I'm saying, right? If you bring any of these guys in, right, Michael Penny still got, when he's healthy, probably going to end up being the starter. Just saying, man. Unless one of these guys come in and they have a resurgent and start to play, the Atlanta Falcons ain't losing games, and the coach don't want to mess up the chemistry and stuff like that. But I don't see any of these guys being somebody that, even if they're winning, you still want to bring in Michael Penix Jr. Just at this point in time, just the way I look at it. Um, but this is the list. Now you bring in a Kyler Murray, that's a whole different you know, scenario, because, like I said, he's more proven than Michael Penix, and now I think it'll be a bona fide competition between those two. But any of these other guys um, is a bridge. That's just the way I look at it. And they bring in these guys. I do not have a choice. My inclination think is going to be Joe Flacco. I think that's the easiest answer, the safest answer. And he can win games, right? Until Michael Penix get back, right? It's crazy or not, my two guys would be Joe Flacco and Jimmy Garoppolo off of this list right here. That's just me, right? We'll see what the Atlanta Falcons decide to do. But there is your quarterback free agent listing. Let's go to your receivers, right? So you're talking about the receivers. These are the receivers on the list. Um, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Christian Kirk, Debo Samuel, De'Ami Brown, Tutu Atwell, Marquise Brown, Jawan Jennings, Khalif Raymond, Rashid Shaheed, DeAndre Hopkins, Greg Dortch, Noah Brown, Keenan Allen, Nick Westbrook. It's more receivers on the list, like I said, but I didn't go down any further. But these are some of the names or free agents you go out there. I think if you're going to get in this list, I will go get a specialist. I will get Rashid Shaheed. He probably the guy that you might want to target. I would say Tyreek Hill, but we don't know his ability to be able to, be healthy. So we don't know about him. But all these other guys, just guys, they would be your third receiver, especially if you decide to keep Darnell Mooney. But a guy like Rashid Shaheed um, would be somebody that can take the top off. So he would be somebody that you would want to add to that receiving core because it's a different dynamic than what you already have. I mean, Darnell Mooney is supposed to be that guy, but he took a lot of injuries this year. We don't really know if Darnell Mooney still got it or not. So that's why he got injured in camp, came back, still didn't look right. Um, and then never really got on track this year. So those are some of the guys you think about when you're thinking about receivers. The draft class has a lot of receivers in it as well, so the Falcons could go in their draft and look at receivers. But right now, looking at this list, um, Shaheed would probably be on the one that I would probably would consider bringing in. Um, if you want to go for somebody, with gadget and stuff like Debo Samuel, but I'm not impressed with the receiver list as well. So if you're looking at the quarterback and receiver, maybe even think about going in a draft for both of those. To be honest with you, um, you have the running backs. So we talked about Tyler Algier going out the door. Right now, here's your running back list, and you're looking at Najee Harris, Austin Eckler, Antonio Gibson, Travis Etienne, Rico Dowd, Nick Chubb. Bing, 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 bing. I think he would be a good backup um, for Bijan Robinson. Different, different type of back, but physical, run hard downhill. So Nick Chubb, Kenny Walker, the Super Bowl MVP. Yes, guys, he's on the free agency. J.K. Dobbins, Dare Ogunwale, Kenneth Gainwell, Jerome Ford, Travis Homer, um, Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert is a free agent. Now, he's a burner, man. Kareem Hunt, um, Kene Dagwadwe, and Jeremy McNicholas. It's more names on the list. He's not all of them, but of course, because we don't see Tyler Algier here. Of course, he's another guy that would be considered a free agent as well. But man, I like Nick Chubb. To be honest with you, I like Nick Chubb because of the history with Kevin Stefanski, and if you look what he was able to do last year, he still has some juice, and he won't be asked to do a lot. He will be a backup, so perfect compliment to a guy like Bijan Robinson. That's what I think about it, um, and I don't think he would cost a lot of money. Um, kind of then John Gruden mentioned Kyler Murray on his show with Michael Penix Jr. I don't know. I have to go back and look at the whole show. I'm not 100% sure that he mentioned Kyler Murray or not, but um, man, we'll have to see. All right, let's go to the next would be the linebackers. I'm talking about Kate Ellis getting out the door. Right now, this list is not as bad as the other positions. Other positions, kind of make you sad a little bit because like man, it's not a lot of guys to pick from. But you're looking at this list here, right? You like it a lot. You do. You like um not some of the older guys that's up in their tooth like Devontae David and Demario Davis and Bobby Wagner. Those guys, nah, we're gonna let those guys go into the sunset. But you got guys like Quay Walker now down there who's 25, going on 26. Um, you got Bobby Oyukre. Then we played for the Giants. They just released him this week. He would be a guy that definitely that somebody might want to consider coming in. He led the team in tackles for the Giants. I think it was just a cap casualty guy because I think they probably would have kept him. Of course, you see Kay Nellis on that list. Um, I'm trying to look at some younger guys. Devin Bush is only going on 28, right? So, and this, like I say, guys, it's not the entire list. There's probably some more guys on the list that you can look at. But for me, I'm looking at either Bobby Enrique or maybe a Quay Walker. That's what I'm looking at. And like I said, they can definitely go into the draft and get a linebacker as well. Um, T. Terry says, Linebacker Christian Harris from the Texans should be there. Yeah, like I said, this is not a whole list, so I'm sorry if I didn't put the whole list on here. But it's more than just these guys. I just took like the first list, and this I got this list off Sport Track. It's more lists out there, right? Some lists actually have them listed from their rankings from 1 to 100. If you want to take a look at that, you can go to NFL Network, go to ESPN. Um, Fox, they all got their own rankings and their top 100 guys. So you can definitely go look at those. You can actually break it down by position, look at different positions too. But this is the linebacker list right here. We go to the defensive tackles, which is a need that I listed. Like I said, you see David Lamiyale, but he's going on 34 years old. DJ Reader going on 32. DeCorin Jones going on 35. John Franklin Myers, right? That's probably would be the guy that Atlanta Falcons could consider, but he's going to cost a penny though, probably because he's one of the top defensive tackles out there. Um, Sebastian Joseph, Calais Campbell, man, is going on 40, still playing. Sheldon Rankins, going on 32. Shelby Harris, 35. Yo, man, you need to see some names on here. This is not the whole list, guys. There's more out there. You're going to go look at the rest of the guys. Like I said, this is not by ranking either, so it's not like this is one through whatever. It's just how they got it listed, and it's by the dollar values. How much they might be able to get in free agency. That's how they got it listed. So that's why David y'all at the top because his production was really good last year. So that's your defensive tackles. All right, let's go to the cornerbacks. Another need that I had. Um, some big names on here, guys, that you could think about bringing in. You got Marshawn Lattimore, Trayvon Diggs, Jamel Dean, Jimmy Ward, Jonathan Jones, Emick Robertson, Eric Stokes, Kader Kodu, Greg Newsome, Tre'Davious White, Benjamin St. Juste, Jeff Okuda, Roger McCrary, Jason Pinnock, and these are not all. Like I said, you get the rest of the list, but man, there's a lot of big name guys on there to come in. Some of those guys is an upgrade on over Mike Hughes. They are right, but what would be the price tag? And could the Atlanta Falcons find somebody cheaper in within the draft? Right, those are some of the things they got to consider. Right, edge. We talked about edge. Edge won't be such a big need, but now it probably is going to be a need. You got guys like Trey Henderson, is number one guy up there. Khalil Mack is older too. Hassan Reddick is still running around here. Joey Bosa, um, Malcolm Kuntz, Leonard Floyd. Right? Do they want to bring Leonard Floyd back? Um, Denico Archery, your two Gross Matos, um, Draymond Jones, Simon Ubukom, Michael Dannon, Aaron Key, Joseph Osei, DJ Warmer, Von Miller. It's more names, guys. More names. It's not the whole edge list, but these are some of the big names out there. I think it'd be a good idea to bring Leonard Floyd back. You might get him on a cheaper deal. Um, right, we just don't know what's going on with James Pierce Jr., but the Atlanta Falcons had a successful run at rushing the passer last year, and you don't want to take a step back on that. So whatever they got to do to fill in that void that they might get from James Pierce Jr. is going to really be huge, right? And then last but not least, guys, actually that was the last one. That was it. Those are needs I went off based off the Atlanta Falcons needs that we had. Um, yeah, I'm excited. We got 4 days left, right? We'll see if the Atlanta Falcons make any moves before the end. Any announcements and things like that. Like I said, they don't have to do anything because they're up under the cap, so it's not mandatory for them to make any moves right now, right? Of course, you will see some moves they start bringing in free agents, stuff like that, restructures, cuts, all that kind of stuff. Now, the cuts will definitely have to be made by Wednesday, right? So if they're going to cut anybody, they will have to make that decision by the new league year, right? They will have to do that. unless there's some guaranteed money, because it's like if you don't make it and there's some guaranteed money on the books, those guys get their money. So you have to think about it like that, right? But the Atlanta Falcons don't have to make any, restructures yet. They can make restructures based off the free agents they bring in, right? So if you say you're going to have an agreement with somebody on Monday, by new league year before the contract can be signed, you can go ahead and restructure guys, and get your cap where you need to be based off your restructures, based off your contract. So they could do it like that, right? So it's not important for the Atlanta Falcons to make moves. It would be nice for them so we can get an idea of what they're thinking about, right? But at this point in time, guys, those guys probably in the fighting hole, playing catch up, trying to get their vision and their plan down. This is setting the foundation for this regime, this off season here, right? So it's important, right? And they don't want to screw it up. It's really important for them to be able to make the best sound decisions for this team, for team building, right? Just to recap, we talked about the their own free agents, right? That's huge for them. We had to talk about their own free agents. We talked about cuts and restructures. Um, what they're thinking about that plan of who they're cutting, who they might be able to restructure. We talked about the team needs, right? The what I feel like the team is going to be needing, and that's also going to be part on who they decide to keep and don't keep from their own free agents, right? Those guys contributed a lot to the team last year. Your quarterback decision is one of the biggest decisions um, for now, right? Because, like I said, they bring in a bridge quarterback. Decisions been made. Michael Penix is the guy, and we just waiting for him to get healthy. And now we just need to find out if he can be the franchise guy, right? They bring in somebody like a Kyler Murray. I think that's automatic competition for Michael Penix, and not a guarantee that Kyler Murray is going to start. He's not proven, right? He only had one good season out of 6 seasons, so like he's not like a proven guy. He has gaudy numbers, right? He has amounts of talent. That's no denying that at all, right? He has amounts of a lot of talent, so that's not denying that by Kyler Murray, right? But he's not a proven guy. So in my opinion, you bring him in, it would be a competition. It would not be automatically your starter. I think he would have to understand that, and if he's willing to come in, not saying that you're going to be an automatic starter, maybe he don't want to come here. I think if you go to Minnesota, it'd be the same situation. He's not going to be promised to starter. He's going to be competition for JJ McCarthy. It will be the same, right? So, um, and if you're a baller, you don't mind the competition. It is what it is. So, but and then last but not least, we talked about the um the free agents, in their position, different positions. The quarterback position is not. I don't. It's not enticing. The wide receiver position, free agents not enticing. Linebackers not bad. You can find some solid linebackers. Running backs, you can find solid running backs. But you get a lot of running backs in the draft as well. So, you have to pick your needs and what you think you're going to need. And if you don't think you're better get those guys in the draft, you're going to try to get it in free agency. That's just the way it is. Um, Nathan chimed in. He says linebacker Christian Harris from the Texans should be there. Yes, most definitely. Like I said, um, he's going to be there. A young option down that edge list is David Ojobu from Baltimore. There you go. There you go. Another edge. Another edge. Hopefully, we got a good pro scouts, pro staff. They finding all these guys you're talking about. You said Von Miller would be. Yeah, I think Jalen Walker worked out with Von Miller this past offseason too. So you're right, that would be. But I heard him say that he's thinking about going back to the Commander. So we'll see what happens. Von Miller, right? He's somebody that's old in the tooth, right? So, but there you have it, guys. Man, I mean, I want to do this show because I want to, set the stage for, what's going to happen in 4 days. 4 days. We're waiting on 4 days and see what happens. If we hear anything else before then, we'll definitely come back on here and talk about it. Um, It's going to be interesting to see what Atlanta Falcons decide to do. This is the foundation for the Matty Ice era, right? He's the president of football. He got his guys. He selected, but now the real work starts, man. Right? Had all their meetings. They made all the decisions. They made what two big decisions so far. Decision to cut Kirk Cousins, which we all knew that was going to happen. Decision to tag Kyle Pitts, which is a big decision because you take him off the market and opportunity to negotiate for a longer term deal, or just play him on that 1 year franchise tag. And then you have the only other news is the news that you cutting Cardell Hard as well. That's it, guys. That was only from personnel, from player movement that we got so far. Now we have got a lot of news on the staff side, right? Um, we fired a coach and we hired a coach, so that's news there, and we all know the the events that took place for James Pierce Jr. down in Miami. So that's a waiting game. We'll just have to see what happens. But guys, let me know what you think about what we had to talk about today. Talked about a lot. Definitely want to get you guys' opinion. What you guys think? Are these the questions that you want to know as well? These are the questions I want to know. Want to know what questions you want to know from this Atlanta Falcon team. There you have it. This is your boy Ricondo coming back at you with another video. Peace.